Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to a video that a lot of people have been requesting. Basically, there are a lot of new spells being leaked for every school, and one set of those spells are the 7-pip conditionals for every school, and they're all Oni. Now, you've seen one or two on the channel as they've been leaked, but I thought because I'm so behind on reviewing all of the Onis, I thought I'd just make a big video talking about all the Onis. Now, each of these Oni spells comes with a 3-pip utility that makes that Oni good. So I'm also going to briefly talk about those. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first spell in this video that we're going to be talking about is the Everwinter Oni. Now, this is basically probably going to be one of the most useful utilities for ice, because not only does it do an absolute ton of damage, as you can see, if you happen to get your opponent with more than 4 traps, you have an 1100 damage hit. Now, I know that sounds like it might not be a lot because you do have to set up a lot of traps, but for ice, that's actually crazy. Like, 1100 damage is a 7-pip Shatterhorn. Not to mention the utility that comes with the Everwinter Oni can literally turn your enemy blades into enemy traps. So if someone were to blade a lot, you could actually convert every single one of their blades into something like a bunch of traps, and once you have enough, you actually have a free shad worth of damage available to you as an ice. I really like it. From my perspective, I feel like ice is so defensive already, and it has such an easy game plan. Blade twice, frostbite a bomb, like something that actually adds another dimension to it. It's always going to be a good thing, especially now that blades are probably less useful across the board. It's good to fill in that gap for ice. The next one that we're going to be talking about is the Storm Oni. Now, this one is called a Turmoil Oni, and I think the first thing that we have to talk about, the damage on this is absolutely nuts. The only thing comparable, I guess, in a single hit is a Triton. Even if you don't have any conditionals met, you actually basically have a free Triton in your hand. Just one extra pip. It does 835 damage, and you can literally double it, doing nearly 1700 damage base. But the catch is, you need to get a bunch of weaknesses on your opponent. Now, you can go through all of the spells that Storm currently has. Nothing that Storm has anything to do with weaknesses, and I think that's something you might notice about all of these Onis. They seem to be actually outside of the school identity in a very certain way. Like, you need to go a little outside of your school in order to set them up easily. I mean, you can definitely see strategies with a lot of weaknesses for Storm, but there is also a utility that comes with this that turns overtimes into weaknesses, which again, you need a lot of overtimes to turn something into 4 weaknesses to do the Oni. So I would argue that this is a very powerful spell, but it's also very hard to set up. I was actually thinking of making a Storm pet on a gloomy goatling, which that might be really stupid, but if you have this card, you can actually set up for a double Oni very, very quickly, and you can also nicely prevent people from healing, which healing might actually become a bigger part of the meta, especially because a lot of these very powerful spells are no enchant. Turmoil Oni is no joke. If you can get the condition, a 1700 damage hit, it's actually like, it's literally a mini Scion in a lot of ways. Obviously, Scion's much more powerful, but because it'll be harder to set up for a Scion with all these blades that you need instead of the way that it currently is, I feel like the reworked Turmoil Oni, especially if you can find a way to do it, it might be really, really worth it. I definitely like it because I think Storm needs a heavy hit, and I do like that there are some really specific ways to set this up that could make it extremely good. So again, we'll see. This one might be underwhelming because it's hard to set up, but it is a very good hit. The next spell that we're going to be talking about is the Infernal Oni. I really like the concept of this one because I feel like it's very simple. You need 2 heal overtimes on you. It's actually very similar to a Life Scion, but in this case, it's a fire spell. So it does 665 damage base, and it does double with heals. That's about a 1300 damage hit for 7 pips. Now, this one, I would argue, especially because you can't enchant it, I feel like in a free might actually be a better move very, very often compared to this. But I think the way to set it up would be very simple, right? You could use Power Link, you could use regular Link, or you could use the spell that accompanies the Infernal Oni. And that spell is called Oni's Forge. And as you see on the screen, it can convert opponent shields into heals for yourself. Now, I think the nice thing about shields is that a lot of the time, right? Like, let's say someone sets shields, even if you break that fire shield, there is still a storm shield left over. So a lot of these like shield converting spells are going to be using things that aren't really in your way, but they can help you anyways. So what I mean by that is that you actually don't have to, like, your opponent doesn't actually have to play very different than what they are now for you to be able to set up this hit. But I think it does come at the cost of damage. I don't think it's as high damage as obviously Storm, but also it's like kind of low. But I do think because you're also technically healing while you're doing this, you have to think about it like that. I feel like it's actually a very good spell for its pips. Now, the next spell that we're going to be talking about very briefly is Tribunal Oni. And the reason it's brief, I actually made a whole video on this spell alone because it is really, really cool. Just to recap, what it does is it does 565 damage, which is kind of low, I guess, for these Onis, especially when you look at something like, you know, the Turmoil Oni. And the double condition, obviously, as you can tell by the card, is that you can do double damage when your opponent has 2 shads on them. But the reason I'm actually going to talk about this is because I think this is a great example of a spell that's actually much, much worse than its utility in a lot of ways. And not worse as in, like, you know, not useful. I just think that the utility is just savage AF, my boy. So I'm talking about Oni's Shadow, which is really an interesting concept. Basically, what the spell does is it affects both you and your opponent. It makes both of you lose 2 pips, and it makes both of you gain a shad. I cannot stress enough how crazy this spell might be. The only, like, comparative spell in the game right now where you can give someone a shad is Donate Shadow. And as you can tell by the pip cost, it's kind of whack because you need 2 shads to give your opponent, your friend, I guess, some shads, or I guess yourself. I don't know why you would do that, but you give anyone a shad at the price of 2 shads, but now it's at the price of 3 pips. Oni's Shadow is really cool, because if you're threatening a Tribunal Oni with a shield up, you're totally forcing your opponent to either shield or shad into a shield, which are both very, very bad moves. And you gain a shad in the process, so if they hit in a weird way, you still have an open shad, possibly. Time will tell if this is busted beyond belief or not. I do think the idea of giving both your opponent and yourself shads, you can't actually argue that it's busted because technically you're losing 3 pips for doing the same effect on both of you. So you're technically losing something. However, I would argue that depending on how you use it and when you use it, it could be a very, very powerful tool. Now, the next spell that I want to talk about is the Primal Oni. The Primal Oni starts at 555 life damage. It does double if you have up to 4 blades on you. Now, much like a lot of the blading spells that we've seen, I think a main player in this is going to be Spirit Blade or any Tri-Blade in general. There is an accompanying spell that can actually convert traps on yourself into blades on yourself. So there is definitely some sort of counterplay. It's just with all the blade removal in this game, I just feel like since someone else can just transfer your blades into something else, I do think it is going to be very useful to have spells like Spirit Blade. But yeah, I don't really see this spell being absolutely insane for life. I don't think it's a game changer. Obviously, it is a very high hit for 7 pips, just like any of these conditionals. But I don't think it does much based off of life's identity, which is why maybe it'll be like a good finisher, if anything. I just think as a life, it'll be harder to set up if you're trying to run a deck that can, like, address a lot of things. Obviously, if you're just running a blade stack setup, yeah, you could blade a bunch of times and run this setup. I don't think that'll work in this upcoming meta, in my opinion. I don't think just blades is ever going to work. I feel like something heal-related would have been better for life, but we'll see. I could be wrong on this. This could be like an underrated champ. I don't know, underrated champ of a spell. Now, the next one I've only briefly covered is called the Doom Oni, but I feel like I have talked about this a lot, and we've also talked about, I believe, Oni's morbidity, but basically, it's a drain for 7 pips. It can do 1,000 drain for 7 pips if you happen to have 4 shields on yourself. Once again, I think all of these shield-based ones are very cool because you are, even when you do something like a volcanic, like even when you do something like, I don't know, even like an elemental or spirit, you have a lot of shields left over, and I think that's going to be the key here. You can just set it up very easily. I think the morbidity spell that comes with it, you can transfer overtime heals into shields on yourself. That's not terrible. I just don't see that being the primary way of setting it up. It could be a good way to counter Life Wizards, obviously, in this upcoming meta. It might be a really important need for death, actually, because I think Life is going to become really good with the way heals are going to work, with the way Hunting Worm is going to add on for Life. So a school that can hard counter that might actually be a pretty damn good thing. So who knows? Maybe that will be the main way that death beats Life. Just transferring their overtimes into a bunch of shields and then sending Oni after Oni. Who knows? I'm excited about Death's a role in this upcoming meta, especially with a lot of these, like, you know, overtime heals being a part of the meta. A lot of schools have overtime heals, and a lot of schools rely on them to do double damage now. So it could make a school that has complete dominance over getting rid of overtime heals really, really cool in this meta. So we'll see, bro. Now, last but not least, we got the Trickster Oni, and that does 600 damage base, but it does double if you happen to have 2 or more overtimes on your opponent. And it's accompanied by basically the spell that transfers weaknesses into overtime. Now, I do have to clarify this, especially because, you know, there are a couple of, like, misconceptions, I think, about these overtime mechanics. Whenever you're converting, in this update, right, when you're converting weaknesses, shields, whatever, into heals or overtimes, it's not the number of weaknesses you convert transfers to the number of overtimes, it's the number of rounds that you have. So let's say you convert 3 weaknesses into the overtime, right? You don't get 3 overtimes out of it. You actually, what you end up doing is getting 5 rounds of overtime out of it. So it's more of a weakness removal tool, and I guess maybe a shield breaker tool than anything. But my problem with this spell is that you don't really have any overtimes on a mid. Like, yes, you have the utility, and then I guess you have a King Art, but you can't really do... I feel like it's really hard to do a 3-pip utility into an 8-pip King Art into a 7-pip Oni. There is a 7-pip overtime that the Plucky Griffin pet gives, which literally does a 7... Like, you know, it actually gives you a blade and then a 7-pip overtime. So maybe you could do that, pip conserve, do a 3-pip to get rid of weaknesses and get another overtime and then do it. I feel like this is the lowest pip overtime that I can even think of, unless you just want to throw in an elf just for the double damage. I don't mind the spell, I just think it's really hard to set up. I don't know, maybe y'all in the comments can give me ideas on exactly how you plan on setting this up. Maybe I can do this for a video. I'm confused on this one. This one's cool, but how do you set it up? There are schools like Fire, which utilities, they convert things like shields into overtimes. Maybe you need that on a Myth, so maybe Myth and Fire will have some synergy there. But I feel like without some off-school utilities, I don't really see you setting this up. Not to mention the fact that you don't really want to use your traps if you're setting up for a new Scion. And a lot of the utilities convert things into traps. So it's a weird thing. I think Myth will have to have some decisions. I think sometimes you might have to go for the Scion. Sometimes you might have to go for this Oni. I don't know. Who knows? So that is my review of all 7 Onis. I wanted to just do a breakdown of all of them. What's their double condition? What is the accompanying spell that they're coming out with in this update? I think all of these, let's be honest, they're all really different from what we currently have, and they're all pretty damn cool. So I hope that we see strategies revolving around these spells. I hope we see like all kinds of crazy ass like approaches. I really think that some matches will come down to how you play around these Onis and all the Scions and Djinns and all these new spells that are coming out. Let me know what y'all's opinion is of all of these spells, man. Let me know. I want to know if you guys are looking forward to these, if you're nervous about them, if you're scared, if you're confused. Let me know in the comments, man. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. Thank you guys for watching, man. I look forward to reading your opinion on all of these. I want to do a full video on these because they're so cool. Let me know what you think. As always, if somebody has not told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong, so stay awesome. And yeah, y'all.